Hey guys, thanks for tuning in to the English Made Simple show. Thanks for tuning in for the 186th time. This is episode number 186. Number 186. And for those of you who don't know me, my name is Milena from EnglishMadeSimple.net. EnglishMadeSimple.net. Hope everybody is doing well. Cool. Great. So I hope you enjoyed the 3 interviews that I prepared for you last month. We had a chat with Eduardo from Venezuela. We had a chat with Carlos from Chile and William from Colombia about their IELTS experience. IELTS is the English exam. And also we chatted about their experience of living in Australia as migrants. I'm pleased to say, guys, that those 3 episodes were the most downloaded episodes in the history of this podcast. I can see that a lot of people had enjoyed listening to others going through the experience of nailing down IELTS, tackling IELTS exam. And also you enjoyed listening to these guys talk about, their move to Australia, how they made it across the 7 seas and 7 hills to finally reach Australia at the end of the world. Anyway, I would say it's fair to assume that a lot of people would be interested to know what life in Australia is like for a migrant. I assume this because of the episode downloads. I assume that you guys are interested to know what life in Australia is like for a migrant, for somebody living in Australia. And maybe one reason you are interested could be that maybe you are interested in making the leap across the world to get here. Maybe you are interested in moving, but you don't know how to yet. You don't know how to move yet. So what I want to do in today's episode is tell you about the English Made Simple podcast and about where I see this podcast going, what I personally want to do with it, and what type of content you can expect from today and onwards. But first, let me tell you why I started English Made Simple in the first place. I started this podcast originally to help my students in Chile learn English. That's what I was doing while I lived in Chile. I was teaching English. So hence the majority of content you'll see when you scroll through the old episodes will be about English learning. It will have topics about the English language like grammar, expressions and phrasal verbs and so on. These episodes are also popular with you guys, so they're still available for you to listen at any time. You can still scroll down and listen to those old episodes. But what I've realized over time as I was working with different students from all around the world, I noticed that many are actually asking for help with IELTS, maybe CVs, jobs in Australia. They're asking about the immigration process to Australia, maybe studying overseas. Somebody's interested in studying overseas. Some people are asking about English for work, and these are the people who already live in Australia, okay? So they're asking about English for work, such as, presentations at work, running meetings at work, writing emails, and so on. Because things are done differently, It might take you 5 minutes to write an email in your country, but when you try to write it in English, it might take you a couple of hours, you know what I mean? So basically, I was getting questions about all the stuff that will help a non-native speaker adapt in their new life overseas, okay? In terms of work and life and study in general, okay? So just to paint a picture for you, like for example, working conditions in Chile are way different to working in Australia, okay? You're dealing with different cultures, using different mannerisms. You need to basically relearn the way you portray yourself, the way you speak with people, the way you make small talk with people, for example. As Carlos mentioned from one of the earlier episodes, even the sense of humor could be different. When you move to another country, you kind of you take your sense of humor for granted. So, sometimes you have to be a little bit careful about your jokes because it could easily offend somebody and you didn't mean to offend them, you just didn't know how to express yourself clearly. So, how do you make yourself be understood at your new workplace in English? How do you make friends, chit-chat, and so on? These are some of the struggles that migrants have once they start working overseas. So having said this, as migrants, we also need to be aware of certain expressions, like phrasal verbs and also slang words that are being used at a workplace, for example, in Australia. Right, so you see where I'm going with this? So I had a revelation over the past few weeks that I really... I came to a realization, if you will. I enjoy helping people who are interested in migrating to Australia or New Zealand because I lived in both countries. I spent 12 years in New Zealand and now in Australia probably about 10 years, which makes me, I don't know, a bit older. Anyway, who's counting? So, I would like to make an announcement today. Okay, I'd like to take this opportunity in today's episode to make a short announcement to you guys. I am planning different types of episodes for English Made Simple going forward. You will hear more interviews of people like migrants who live and work in Australia or New Zealand, and they will be sharing some tips with you guys. They will share tips with you so you know what to expect once you land here, that is if you're planning to come here. So I'm just giving you a little bit of a heads up, just giving you, preparing you for what's to come. In the next week or so, don't be surprised if you see a different podcast artwork on your phones, okay? That's also changing because at the moment it's showing English Made Simple, Speak English with Confidence. We are going to change that. So don't be surprised if you see a different podcast artwork. It's still the same show. It's still Milena here on the mic, okay? So I'm really excited to be sharing the new and updated podcast logo, okay? It's not ready yet, but it will come soon, hopefully. It's all part of the EMS evolution, okay? After 2 years of podcasting, I think the time has come for me to finally pivot. Pivot means to turn or change direction. I like to keep things interesting for you guys, but most importantly, I like to keep things interesting for myself. I am the one speaking into the microphone, speaking into the computer once a week, okay? I need to keep things fresh and interesting, right? So, one thing I'm not going to change though is the intro music. I kind of like this intro music that we have currently, so I will keep that. The EMS show, or English Made Simple show, will continue with the new content to help migrants who are also non-native speakers coming from non-English speaking backgrounds to quickly settle in Australia or New Zealand. The new content for the English Made Simple show is going to help migrants to be successful at work and in life in general, to be successful living here in a foreign country with different customs and, trying to tackle this foreign language as well. You will still receive episodes once a week. Everything is the same except the content that's going to change. So I wanted to take this opportunity in today's episode to give you a little bit of a heads up, as I mentioned, a bit of a warning, so you're not like, what's going on? What is this show? What has happened to Milena? Was she abducted by aliens? Nope. No, I wasn't. Not yet, at least. It's the same show, just with a different content. You're welcome to stay and keep listening, of course, even if you're not considering moving anywhere. I just want to involve you in the whole process of what's going on. as this is a big change for English Made Simple. I am planning to bring on different guests to the show, including migration agents, recruitment agents, education agents, and even English teachers. As I'm stepping away from English teaching and focusing more on helping migrants, I'm planning to produce more content that's relevant to migrants mostly. The ones who are either living here or are planning to come here, okay? But since those migrants are also non-native speakers, they will also be needing help with English. This is why I'm planning to get some English teachers on board on the podcast as well. So the show will still be helpful to you guys who just want to learn English, okay? Cool? And why am I changing the content? Why, Milena? Why are you doing all this? Well, I'll tell you why. Just a quick why, okay? Just a quick reason why. So here's why I'm passionate about helping migrants who are coming to Australia or New Zealand. First of all, I know their struggles. I had experienced them firsthand. My husband is going through the same struggles. My parents had the same struggles 20 years ago when they emigrated to New Zealand. And guess what? The new migrants arriving today in Australia or New Zealand are still experiencing the same struggles. Struggles is kind of like a vague reason, okay? So let me give you an example of one major struggle for a migrant, okay? Let's say you decided to come to Australia. You go through the whole visa process, you finally land in Australia, and bam, you can't find a job. But the reason the government gave you the visa in the first place was due to the lack of skills in Australia that were needed to be filled by migrants, okay? And yet you keep getting rejected by recruiters because you don't have local experience, okay? When you start looking for work, you basically involve recruitment agents. And most of the time, if you don't have anything on the CV to say that you have local experience on your CV, most of the time they will reject you, okay? So, of course, you don't have the local experience because you've been living in your home country since you were born, since you were a baby, and you never had a reason to come to Australia to gain that local experience, unless you were a student in Australia, which is another story, right? So you see where I'm coming from? I was just really surprised. I read an article the other day that the migrants are still being asked to show local experience on their CVs. If you have friends or know of anyone thinking about moving to Australia, be sure to tell them about English Made Simple podcast. If you have friends who live in Australia or New Zealand, be sure to tell them about this podcast because that would be awesome. You guys are awesome. Now, if you had been listening to my show for a long time now, I'd really like to hear from you. I want to know, how do you feel about this change, about where English Made Simple is going? How do you feel about this new show format? I'm giving you an opportunity to voice your opinions because I care about you. Well, there it is. That's the show for today. I'm currently away on a short holiday, so if you don't hear from me next week, it's because I am enjoying winter in Melbourne. I'm being sarcastic. Nobody enjoys winter in Melbourne. I'm actually house sitting and looking after our family cat while my dad is overseas. So I've decided to come to Melbourne for a month, okay? And if you follow me on Instagram, you'll be seeing a lot of pictures of the cat. Anyhow, I will see if I can dig up some old episodes to share with you next week to keep you entertained. In the meantime, until I'm back from my short holiday, which is just a week or two, I'll be back. Don't worry. So let's keep in touch anyway via Facebook, Instagram, or email. Speaking of which, if you are planning to travel to Australia, be sure to download the free guide that's available on the website englishmadesimple.net/guide. The guide is called Insider's Guide to Life in Australia, written by a migrant for migrants. and you can't really miss it. It's on the front page. Cool. Thank you for listening this far, amigos y amigas. You've been jamming with Milena from English Made Simple. Until next time, hasta la próxima.